Howdy, y'all. Welcome to this
Hey.
week's episode of Paranormal Lens. We're doing West Virginia. I got to go there.
Okay. I was
just
wondering where that
insulted
came from.
a gazillion people, Chad. This might be the end of me.
No,
Good evening,
no.
everybody. Welcome to this week's episode. Jamie Widener here, Chad Thomas there or there. One of the
Somewhere.
directions. He's around here somewhere. I'm sure you can see him. I can. So, what's happening, buddy?
Lots of little things.
I absolutely understood that. Lots of, right? And it adds up. It's amazing. Like, the week goes by, obviously Tuesday to Tuesday, here we are again. Mm-hmm. And like, if you had to ask me like a highlight, I couldn't tell you one thing, but I could tell you like 60 things. And
right.
None of them are major things, but all of a sudden it adds up and here we are. Bam.
Mm-hmm.
So. Hey, good evening, Todd and Carmela.
Yeah, Todd and Carmela, they were on a podcast last night with Ron and Lourdes in that group, and it was really fun. If you get a chance, Jamie, you got to go back and watch it.
I saw about it, but I didn't see it yet. So I actually read an article that Todd posted about Ron Iacovetti earlier today. So thanks for sharing that. We really appreciate it. Shout out to Ron, of course, Lourdes, and all the Staticom.
Yep. And Amanda, how are you tonight? And
hey.
I'm glad you're with us. I'm glad everybody's with us.
It is good, Jim. I hope it is for you too. I do. Yeah. Very cool.
So,
all right. Well, not much here either. So, like it's all of a sudden, here we are again. So,
so school's out, so it's like things should slow down, but they haven't.
Yeah, well, it has for the kids. Like, no more 6:30 wake ups and all that fun. I don't think the only time they see 6:30 now is PM. So, back in the day, we did it too, I guess. So it's fair. But man, I also want to compliment you on your knowledge that today is Red T-shirt Day.
Yep.
Good job. Fashion forward sense there. Go Phils.
Yep. We didn't get the I didn't get the memo, but I knew.
So. You knew. Yeah. That means we've been doing this too long.
And our buddy Dave's on with us tonight.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah. Todd, it was a great show. I had to bail out towards the end because I was falling asleep, but it was great. And I do have to go watch the end, but I appreciate everything. And I got to get down to the Montgomery house at some point. They had a lot of good evidence from there. So okay. It's a Carolina trip. We got to do it sometime, Jamie.
Oh, I know, right? It's just, it's like when you plan a road trip, you kind of want to hit all the hot spots of like the cool things. We joke about this, like the world's largest bowl of twine, or I do know where the world's largest artichoke is in California. Paul Bunyan up in somewhere in the north tier somewhere, blah, blah, blah. But to hit all the paranormal hot spots, it's like we'd be on the road forever, So, I'm game for that, but unfortunately we have to work too. So,
yeah. I was checking out where there's paranormal stuff in Ohio, Jamie. You get that.
yeah. And it's funny because I go to Cincinnati a good bit for work. And
hey, Kyle.
Good evening. I was looking for stuff while I was there, to do. And unfortunately, I'm there like during the weekdays, and there's not much. A lot of everything's weekend attractions or weekend opportunities. And but I did find they have these. I would call them like cellars. That's not quite the right way of saying it. We're like catacombs, more or less, but they're not quite that either. And then I got a chance to walk through those, so that was kind of fun, but no activity that I could catch. Oh, yeah, I totally agree, Todd. I totally agree. But until I become, a lottery winner, or you got to play the lottery to win the lottery. But whatever. Yeah. One time I buy a ticket and I win everything. Then we'll all go. We'll get a bus. We'll just pile in. And have a bus driver. That would be nice. So
so we can rest and not have to deal with the road. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. We can tell stories and stuff. So, all right. Well, speaking of taking a bus, Chad. Let's take a bus trip.
Let's take a bus trip.
So, first of all, I'm really happy to tell you that tonight's episode has a sponsor. It is brought to us from the state that brings you such spooky things like banjos playing in the middle of the woods, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, the Sweet Springs Sanitarium, the old hospital on College Hill, the West Virginia Penitentiary, and the Mothman. So obviously West Virginia, right? So we're going to take a trip to Harpers Ferry, West Virginia on our magic bus.
Okay.
Now, I know you haven't been, so and shame. Dude,
No.
it's easy in, easy out. It's like a little over an hour from us, even closer from your neck of the woods, going over by Gettysburg and hopping on 15. Easy in, like I said, easy out. So let's go to the first slide. So here we are. We're looking at what we're as little as of West Virginia as we possibly can be. Up there in that little point, up here in the hookover of West Virginia in Jefferson County, and on the very edge of it is Harpers Ferry. It's located at the confluence of the Shenandoah and the Potomac rivers. So, next slide. So history, and there's a lot of it. So bear with me. I'm not going to try to bore anybody, but history matters in some of this, and I think it's important to set up some of the people and the rationale why they're there. So Harpers Ferry was originally settled in 1734 by a fellow named Robert Harper. Go figure, he named the town after himself, right? And of course, he had a ferry that crossed the Potomac and a grist mill on the Shenandoah. And we might know a little something about grist mills, right, Jim? So, they were a prevalent thing in the time. It was a process point. Everybody needed a product that was made through a mill. And, this was no exception, especially as this was kind of the frontier at the time as well. We weren't looking that far west yet. So the Harpers, he and his wife were right on the edge of civilization for a while. Another big part of history for Harpers Ferry is that President Washington selected the site for a federal armory, and the proximity of both rivers, being the confluence of them, offered an incredible amount of water power. I wanted to take advantage of that. And the U.S. government bought the location from the Harper heirs in 1796. The town developed it as an important location for manufacturing of rifles thereafter, and that's going to matter in the story as well. By 1830, a little time jump, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad along the Chesapeake and Ohio canals reached Harpers Ferry. This helped bring commerce in and made the town a commercial hub for a time. If you walk the shoreline of the Shenandoah, you still see the remnants of all of the factories and manufacturing facilities that were along the waterline. And there's not a lot left. Time has taken its toll in flooding and just generalness of it all. But in it, you can certainly tell it's still there. And as you go to the Potomac side, the C&O Canal towpath is still there, and it's actually now a bike trail, which we'll talk about a little later. But it's, you can see sort of some of that infrastructure still existing, and what helped to make this town become sustainable and viable as a location. So around October 16th, on October 18th, 1859, the arsenal on Harpers Ferry was raided by abolitionist John Brown and 16 other men. So hopefully we've all heard about this in a history class somewhere along the way, John Brown's raid. Mm-hmm. Taking the armory was the first step in a rather elaborate plan to create an independent stronghold for free slaves in the mountains of Virginia and Maryland. So as you're looking at the upper left picture, on the left side of the river is Virginia, and the picture is taken from Maryland. So Harpers Ferry is that kind of weird point. And again, you see the hook on the map, how it sits between those two areas. So, and it's pretty wild up there. In that time, certainly would have been. So the entire countryside was alerted, and a combined force of state and federal troops overwhelmed the raiders 2 days later. All 17 men died in the fighting, including 2 of John Brown's sons. Brown and 6 of his insurrectionists survived, were tried in nearby Charlestown, and hung on December 2nd, 1859. Remember, the raid happened on October 16th. It took 2 days, so October 18th, for it to be over, and he was tried and hung on December 2nd. That is about 6 weeks. You talk about a quick trial. Mm-hmm. So while the raid was denounced by Northerners, many Southerners were outraged as they were already fearful of slave rebellions. And it was a thing at this time. We're in the prelude to the Civil War at this point, and talking around 1860. Brown's actions convinced many Southerners that abolitionists would stop at nothing to end their particular institution of slavery, and many credit the raid as a key catalyst to move the South closer to secession and eventually the Civil War. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they certainly did not take you right. And it was appalling that this would happen as well. That this effort would happen, and there weren't a lot of sympathy on either side. During the Civil War, Harpers Ferry was considered an important link in the defense to Washington, D.C., and was attacked many times by both sides. So again, strategically, its location along the Potomac, certainly the Potomac flows right into Washington, and it was very, very much a strategic location to protect the city. A key battle occurred on September 16th in 1862 when Confederate General Thomas Stonewall Jackson captured the town and took over 12,500 Union troops captive. This was the largest Union surrender during the entire Civil War. Not the day with the most casualties, as by far Gettysburg, and
Right.
mostly by Antietam and so forth. But as far as just a straight surrender, a lot of men were given up that day. So we all know the war ended, right? So after the war, Harpers Ferry went back to being the sleepy river town that it was before. It was authorized as a national monument in 1944. And it was redesignated as a National Historical Park in 1963, which it is still today. The site contains museums, monuments, and historic buildings associated with John Brown's raid, the Civil War, and many other aspects of the region's history. They have a fantastic kind of walk-through center when you enter the park. And then actually, I would, if anyone's going, I advise you go to the visitor center there and go into the park because they have a shuttle bus that'll bring you into town. Parking is incredibly limited in the town itself, but the bus brings you right downtown to, of course, to the gift shop, of course, right? You enter and exit here by the gift shop, but it's a free shuttle and it's easy to do, and everything's walkable after that. So. It's a lot of history, right? We're talking back to 1734 to current, a lot of issues between the Civil War, between John Brown's raid, there's other stuff. So let's talk about the paranormal stuff, because that's what we're here for. Right? Yeah. Okay, next slide. So this is what's called Camp Hill, and not Camp Hill as in like near Harrisburg, PA, the city. Camp Hill served as an encampment for Union and Confederate troops during the Civil War. Originally, troops camped in the lowland part of town, but due to increased levels of illness, presumed to be due to the proximity to the rivers, the troops were moved to the camp, what's called Camp Hill, because they camped on the hill or higher ground up on High Street. So the picture on the left is what it looked like to some degree back then. The picture to the right is what it looks like now. Obviously, we built up a lot of the area there. And the paranormal claim here, and I think this is an interesting one, is the sound of drums and of marching feet is often heard along High Street in this area. And this is about 3 blocks from what I would call the bottom of town, or the main drag in. Next slide. This is St. Peter's Roman Catholic Church. Here, Father Michael Costello was the priest from 1857 to 1867. So he was there during the height of the Civil War. His ghost is said to have been seen walking around the outside of the church, patrolling the grounds. Another spirit here is a scene of a soldier sitting on the front steps. During the Civil War, the church was a field hospital where many soldiers died while waiting for treatment. So perhaps that soldier expired while he was waiting to be seen or helped. Next slide. So this is the Harper House. Talking about going back to the Harpers who originally settled the area, they built their house up on the hill so they could see their ferry site on one side and a bit of the Shenandoah on the other side for their gristmill, which was easily accessible by going out the back way. Mm-hmm. Rachel and Robert Harper built their home on the hilltop overlooking the ferry site, as I mentioned. Before the Revolutionary War began, they ran a successful ferry service, were forced to pay an excessive tax to England, right? Taxation without representation. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
So, Rachel was said to hide money in a jar to avoid paying the fees. In 1780, Rachel fell off a ladder while cleaning and died the next day. Not sure how she was injured, but I'm assuming a head wound. She never told Robert where the jars were hidden. And when he passed in 1782, 2 years later, the funds were never found. There is a belief that the jars are buried in the garden across the street, which is in the bottom left corner. There's a wall and a garden above and behind, and there's a gate actually about halfway down that picture that you can't go in. Claims are that a woman in 1700s clothing can be seen peering in that direction from a window overlooking the garden. Might this be Rachel keeping an eye on her money? Maybe.
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 Can we take your metal detector down, Jamie?
It can't get in there. Yes, we could, of course. And the problem here is two things. One is that area is secure by a gate and the wall, and two, because it's a national park, it's frowned upon.
So, yeah, digging in a national park
and I'm sure wouldn't be the first persons to try. And
right.
Obviously, there's certain times you probably could get away with it more, but I'm going to go with we're too pretty for jail. So
yeah.
Or at least you are. So here we are, John Brown's Fort. The picture to the left is the original location. The monument piece there on the left side of that picture is the actual building location. It was torn down after the Civil War and then rebuilt in a replica on the right, which is actually down at High Street at the bottom of town. So you can walk up to it, you can walk into it as well, but it is not the original building. And it does say so on the placards around it. The monument is on the left is to dedicate the site for the loss of lives that happened during the raid. Okay. So again, on the night of August 16th, 1859, John Brown led up to 21 men now, because there were some who joined in the fervor, and raid to capture the U.S. arsenal in Harpers Ferry. The goal of using the guns to create an army of former slaves and decided a rebellion for all free slaves and a free state for them to live. His raid included taking hostages, which included a gentleman named Fontaine Beckham, who was the mayor of Harpers Ferry. When the state and U.S. forces arrived 2 days later, we took the arsenal. 6 men died, including Mayor Beckham, and 10 of Brown's men, including his 2 sons we talked about earlier. Brown survived and was hung and tried for treason. And hung, sorry. In the retaking of the town, this is a key thing to think about. Retaking the town was led by a Colonel Robert E. Lee. Might sound familiar. And a Lieutenant J.E.B. Stewart, or Jeb Stewart, who would both be significant players in the upcoming Civil War on the Confederate side. So both men were in Gettysburg. Both men made it through the end of the war as well. Both were, of course, Lee was the overall general for the Confederate forces, and Stewart was a very high-ranking general as well. But both were, at the time, federal officers. And the paranormal claim here is that John Brown's full-bodied apparition is said to appear in the streets of the lower town near the armory. Now, whether that's true or not, I'm not sure, because the armory as it's located is not where it was. So, might it just be a proximity thing? I don't know. But it seems like it's plausible. Next slide, please. So there is a train set that runs through town. In fact, there are 2. One is a Conrail, not a Conrail, a train line, an actual passenger train line. And then there's a freight line, and that's what this is. And this is not as active as it used to be, of course. But this is the story of a woman known as Screaming Jenny. Jenny was an elderly woman who lived along the Potomac side of town. She was often seen looking for driftwood to keep her fire going in her small shack home. And the riverside and the area down in the lower town was dotted with these shacks of people who were workers and working in the factories and the facilities in town. Most didn't have a lot of resources, and they built their homes out of the materials they could find. So it's not surprising that she'd be along the river looking for driftwood. It's said that one night her dress slipped into her fire and it burst into flames, quickly consuming her. She ran from the shack toward the river, screaming for help. The way to the river crossed the railroad tracks, and in her duress, Jenny did not see the evening train and was struck and killed by it when crossing the tracks. Can you imagine that? Like you're already on fire, and then shit, there's a train. It's a double whammy, literally.
Definitely, yeah.
Oh, that's a bad pun. Sorry, folks. Since then, engineers have claimed that they see a huge ball of flame rolling along the tracks, followed by a scream as loud as a train wheels on iron rails. And I used to live along the Susquehanna. There's a train line, Norfolk Southern line. When trains are ahead of schedule, they stop and catch up time. And it would happen, unfortunately, in front of my house a lot. And at 3 or 4 in the morning, when they were back to schedule, they would start up again. And that screech of wheels is undeniable. and the coupling of expansion of couplings as well. The bang, bang, bang. I don't know how I ever slept. I really don't, but it's a cool house. But great view. But yeah, every night. So I can only imagine how loud that is. So that's the scream of terror that you're on fire and so forth. So next slide. So this is an image of Hog Alley, and up on the upper right side there, that house up on the hill is the Harper House. So this is just down off the middle of town. It's 1 block to the left to be down at High Street, which is the main street in, and at the river level where the John Brown's Fort is now. So here, freed slave, and this is a great name. You can't make up names like this. Dangerfield Newby was desperate to find a way to free his wife and young child from slavery. So he joined John Brown's rebellion. During the conflict, he was killed by a spike to the neck. Like, what a way to go. Not as bad as being burned and hit by a train, but still pretty bad.
Yeah.
It is reported that the citizens of Harpers Ferry were so outraged by the assault that they repeatedly stabbed and then dismembered his body and left it in an alley for the free-roaming hogs to eat. The alley is now known as Hog's Alley. And the claim here is that Dangerfield's ghost has been seen in the alley with a horrible scar on its neck, or his neck. So,
which makes sense.
I have walked through this alley so many times, I can't tell you. And during daylight for the most part, although many times at night now too. But I have never seen this, but it certainly makes sense given the tragic death and the way he went.
Yeah, Amanda, that is pretty intense.
Yeah, that is. I mean, wow. So the next slide. This is my favorite thing in Harpers Ferry. My absolute favorite thing. And unfortunately, it's not what it used to be. So bear with me. I'm going to try to get through this without getting a little teary-eyed. This is Hilltop House. And this was originally built in 1888 and was finally closed in 2007. Not to go to it next, but the next slide will show you why. Originally owned by a gentleman named Thomas S. Lovett, who was an African-American entrepreneur and a graduate of nearby Storer College. Originally a wooden frame structure, the property experienced a significant electrical fire in 1919 and was rebuilt as a stone structure. Guests to the Hilltop House include Presidents Woodrow Wilson, Calvin Coolidge, and Bill Clinton. Other notable guests include Mark Twain, Carl Sandburg, Alexander Graham Bell, Pearl S. Buck, and me. I made the list.
You made the list?
I made the list. I put myself on it, but I made the list. So the activity here, let's go to the next slide. And this is where it is today. So it has, in 2007 until now, it has fallen into some significant disrepair. Part of the front facade has collapsed. There is a wing out over the cliff side that has collapsed. Structural damage, water damage, all kinds of damage. It looks like a bomb hit it. And it was this beautiful place before. So I've stayed there a couple times. I've had dinner there many, many times. The best fried chicken I've ever eaten. But sad. There's plans to rebuild and redo, and it'll be gorgeous when it's done, if it gets done. Like everything else, it's relying on tax dollars and investors and interest.
Jamie, if you win the lottery, I would say put your money here instead of the bus.
Yeah, I have to win a lot of lottery though for that.
It is a shame. I was afraid you were going to say it burned down, so I'm glad that
it would have been better. It probably would have been better if it burned down. Honestly, it would be gone at least. It's still there in this incredibly dilapidated condition. There's a fence around the whole facility now. You can go up. There's a fantastic vista point because it is the highest point in town, so you can look out over both rivers. You can see the entire downtown. There are the old spyglass things you can walk up and you can twist and turn. They're still there. It used to have this great kind of setup there. It's still available for access, but there's usually at least a patrolling guard around the facility now because they don't want people going in and doing stupid stuff.
Right. And it's a shame because this is where we're finding more and more and more of our things.
Yeah, exactly. So. No. Well, yes, but no. So unfortunately, this building, let's talk about the hauntings of this place. So let's do that and I'll answer your question better, Todd. So the staff here have reported the sound of chairs being moved in the dining room well after closing. A man has been seen with long, wavy, dark hair, dressed in all gray and wearing black boots, patrolling around the halls. The staff has reported seeing shadow figures, hearing disembodied voices, experiencing footsteps when no one is around, and being touched. So traditional paranormal stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Female guests have reported being woken by a weight on their chest and a feeling of hands upon their neck. And that's not cool, no matter what.
Right.
And this was really interesting. The random sound of gunfire was heard inside the building.
Right.
So consider this also was part of the war zone of the Civil War. And this location would have been prominent to have command of because of the view, first of all, and the access points. So,
so Jamie, I'm going to stop you real quick just to say hi to Lourdes.
Hey, Lourdes. Good to see you. Thanks for coming.
If they say Paranormal Lens during Staticom, let us know, Lourdes.
Yeah, please. Yeah. We'll catch up with y'all soon.
So, thanks for stopping in.
So, I say all this to answer Todd's question about a specific location to investigate. In this case, the Hilltop House is literally closed and shuttered and secured. There are other places in town, but because it's a national park, it's a little more challenging. Because being out in the dark and so forth, it's a working town. Don't get me wrong; people live there, and there are businesses there, and all the stuff that you would expect. But because it is a national park for the entirety of the town itself, it's a bit more challenged. Now, I'll get to an opportunity of that in a moment that might happen. So
let me ask you a quick question, Jamie. It's a national park, and like Gettysburg National Military Park closes, like the streets to the military park close at 8, and if you're caught on them, you'll get fined very quickly.
Yep.
Is it different here?
We're looking at too. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it different here then?
It is. It isn't. It is. It is. Oh, sorry. It is. Yes, different because you can live here, right? So you can go out at night. You can walk around. You can do whatever you would normally do. However, if you go into places like where the monument is for John Brown's fort, or the original arsenal, if you go over to the property that is the true visitor center and the showcase, yes, you will get in trouble there. But otherwise, and because you could still, I'll get to some of the stuff that you can do while you're there in a moment. But you as a person, you could be out on the trails, you could be out on all kinds of other things at any time of day at your discretion, your venture at your risk kind of thing. So it's a bit different that way. It just depends on where you go and what you're doing. Because there are so many private residences and private businesses, it's a different story there too. You have to know someone to know something. Now, I'm going to say that to say, let's go then. Well, let me finish the thought on this. The Hilltop House is hopefully coming back. If it does, I'd really be interested in going back to it to see if there's an opportunity to figure something out. Because obviously we know energy doesn't always leave just because this building's shuttered for this time. So those claims could be worth investigating. It is a public space. Let's go to the next slide. So if you go to Harpers Ferry, I'm going to give you some things. So the Harpers Ferry claims to have the oldest active ghost tour in the United States at 54 years old, starting in 1970. And I know that because that's the year I was born. Holy cow. So,
wow, Jamie, you're old.
I am as old as this tour. Man, it just hit me. The walking tour is kid and dog friendly. It is not, and I repeat, not a paranormal investigation, nor is it a ghost hunt. Photography and video are welcome and encouraged. The stories presented are based on the 1977 book, which is in the lower left there, A Ghostly Tour of Harpers Ferry by Harpers Ferry resident and restaurateur Sherry Doherty, along with stories captured by the United States Park Service. Tours are held Monday through Saturday nights year-round, but reservations are highly advised to ensure a spot is held for you. So, Todd, this is a thing to do, and I've never done it, and I've stayed over, like I mentioned, but I've passed through or around a conglomerate of people on it, and the telling of stories is really what they're up for. As investigators, this is nice because it has the background and a lot of the detail stuff. But you certainly could just go purchase the book and save the time there, and maybe invest it elsewhere that you could actually investigate something. So and it does seem to go on for quite a while. It's like a 2-hour tour kind of thing, not quite as long as Gilligan's Island, but a couple hours after dark. So depending on the season, certainly too. Like now, it would be great to do, but come the fall, it gets chilly up there in the mountains. So be prepared for that. Okay, so next slide. As I mentioned, since the town is a national park, there are limited amenities. So if you do go, I suggest the following. Stay at the Stonehouse Bed and Breakfast, which is the gray building to the right of the red roof at the corner of the picture on the upper left. I've stayed there a couple times. It's an original property, one of the very original properties, because it's right downtown. So the oldest stuff is closest to the river. The hosts are great. The place is very comfortable. It's easy to get to walk everywhere else you go. But with that, there's history there too. So, as I was there were creaks and bumps and moans of the house, but also you're sharing with other people in other rooms. So
right.
maybe not. If you go have lunch or dinner at the Rabbit Hole, which is a couple doors up the street, upper right-hand picture there, casual dining, great food. They have a wonderful deck overlooking the Potomac side of the river. The train station and so forth is on that side, the passenger train station. Go hang out at the barn, which is the lower corner, and it is exactly that. It's a barn. There is not a lot of late night activity happening in Harpers Ferry. Go figure, right? Sleepy River town. But there are adult beverages and live entertainment pretty much every night. So it's not like you just have to go and sit and look at the river. Next slide. Using Harpers Ferry as a home base is something I've done several times. And I really recommend Shepherdstown, West Virginia, which is about a half an hour to the north up the Potomac, and or Charlestown, which is about a half an hour to the west. Both are 30 minutes away and have something for everyone. Charlestown has a casino and a horse track. So I know Dave's with us. Dave, there you go. And I remember going to this track when I was probably 7 or 8 years old, the first time I ever thought about what horse racing was and saw it. And it's fascinating to see it live. Now, obviously, we just came out of Belmont and some of the big, we're in the horse race season. So obviously it's on our minds, maybe more in the summer, but the track's open a lot through all year long. In Shepherdstown, man, what a cool place. It's directly across the Potomac from the Antietam National Battlefield. So I recommend the general store here, Gurley's. It is not a general store like you're familiar with. It was fascinating stuff in there, really very kitschy and cool. But it's on the way into town. You can't miss it. It's right at a bend and it's obvious. And also, if you recall back a couple of years ago, back in 2016, there was a paranormal series called Ghosts of Shepherdstown, and Nick Groff starred in it along with Elizabeth Saint and Bill Hartley. It was filmed there over, I think, 8 or 10 episodes, trying to use the entire town as an active location. And they would get cues of places that were active. They would get calls from the police department if someone called and said something's happening. They were flexible and nimble enough to investigate the entirety of the town over the course of that episode. It's a one season series, which makes it really kind of interesting to watch. It's not going to continue. And they had a verdict at the end of what's causing the activity. Shepherdstown was the evacuation spot for the Confederates coming out of Antietam. So a lot of stuff happened during the war and in the end of the war. So highly active area. Next slide. And we probably should do an episode on Shepherdstown at some point too. That makes sense. Mm-hmm. So other stuff. So you mentioned about, like what else to do, what to do. So if I were in the area, I could be hiking the Appalachian Trail. It runs right through Harpers Ferry, and at least part of it. So the trail skirts the Harpers Ferry Cemetery, which is one of the high points of town. There's some fantastically old tombstones there. One of them, and I wish I could find the picture I took. It is probably 5 feet tall and 4 feet wide, and it is a man and all of his wives below him, and he must have had 7 of them, and the last one outlived him. So I wonder what she did to him. So there's just some forever old stuff up there, but the trail passes through before it goes down in the main town and crosses over into Maryland. Harpers Ferry is in the upper picture there, approximately the halfway mark of the entire trail from north to south. And the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, which is the oversight of the entire trail, is in Harpers Ferry as well. So
I didn't realize that.
yeah, it's uptown. It's closer to Bolivar, which is the next town up, but it's in Harpers Ferry proper. And eventually, if you are a very adventurous individual, you can say you hike the trail in 3 states. If you take the 2.5 miles from Harpers Ferry down to Virginia, and then you come back and cross the river into Maryland, you can do 3 states in one day. It's the only place on the trail you can. I've done that. It's kind of fun. So the next slide. So I had to include this because of our friends at the Commonweal, right?
Yep.
So the C&O Canal has been transitioned from a canal line into a bike path. And you can go from Washington, D.C. all the way to Cumberland, Maryland on this trail. And that's the map that you see on the left side. It is 184.5 miles, and it follows the original tow path. Now, Chad, why do they call it a tow path?
Because animals used to tow the boats up and down the canal.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah, I knew one.
You got one. You got a bonus point. So the idea would be that a mule likely would bring them, because they're going against the current of the river coming north to south or south to north. They would need to be towed. And then if you include an expansion that happened a few years ago at Cumberland, there is now a connection to what's called the Great Allegheny Passage or Gap Trail, which adds 145.5 more miles to the trail. So you get a total of 334, and it connects to Pittsburgh. So you can ride a bike from Pittsburgh to Washington, D.C., all on this trail, off traffic, out of danger. So I think that's something Ben should know about, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, yep. And then did you know from D.C., you can go the whole way, I think the whole way to almost Williamsburg.
Oh, no. I did not know that. That's really cool.
I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong, but I know there's some definitely, or maybe there's one from Richmond to Williamsburg. But but anyway, you can do quite a bit on bikes down there.
Yeah,
so.
That's fantastic. Here we have trails that connect and connect and connect as well. So you can basically walk from here to Pittsburgh on trail. Hopefully staying mostly out of traffic as well. Now, obviously, it's much more fun to ride. It's faster. But it's amazing how much connection we have. Let's go to the next slide.
Yeah. Bert's been there and saw the locks.
Yep. The locks are still there. Absolutely. Yeah. So there's a few things we did not talk about. One of them is in the lower center slide there, Jefferson's Rock. So Thomas Jefferson, being a Virginian and being across the river, would come to Harpers Ferry at times, and there's this point that's just off the cemetery and just off the trail, the Appalachian Trail as well, easily accessible to walk out onto. And it's kind of a flat rock that just creates a vista because of its prominence and protrusion over the face of the hill below. Jefferson was said to come and hang out and ponder life and all kinds of things. Obviously he had a lot going on. So who knows, perhaps his spirit is still around there as well, since he had fondness for the location. The other shots here there's some bridges that have long gone. One train bridge collapsed during a storm one night. That's the upper left. And some of the vestiges of the town itself. It's pretty cool. And next slide. Same thing. More stuff for the town. So actually, I'm going to back up a minute. Can we go back about 3 or 4 slides? I came across something, and I got a curiosity right here. So in the bottom center, there is when you're crossing the river, and it's a walking path right next to train tracks. So it's all one big bridge, but there is a walking bridge part of it that has a chain link fence. So of course you don't fall into the river or jump in either way. Right. All along it are padlocks. And I wondered about it. So I did a little digging to try to understand this more. And I have a side story to tell. It's a side quest for the gamers in the world. So these are called love locks. Mm-hmm. And this started in pre-World War I Serbia. And the story is that a couple fell in love and met nightly on a local bridge. World War I started. He went off to war. And while he was away, he met and fell in love with another. She, distraught as she was, lost the love of her life, died of a broken heart. Okay. So these superstitious, and this is Serbia. So, we're talking about places with superstition. Superstitious local women went to the bridge and placed locks on it with the names of their lovers on the padlocks, locking the padlock and hopefully binding them to their love forever. Now, these locks are on almost every bridge that has a chain link fence anywhere in the world. Harpers Ferry is no exception to that. You place the lock, you make out a little bit just to seal your love, and you toss the key into the water, river, whatever it is, and then you shovel off, and you're loved together forever. So there's a problem with this. So remember the show Parks and Rec? NBC show a long time ago. Chris Pratt had a start there. Very funny show, actually. I recommend it. All streaming now. So in that episode, there's an episode where they go to Paris and they walk onto the Pont des Arts Bridge, do this very activity, which then led, to the internet taking it, and everybody came and did it. So here's where it's a bad idea. A section of that bridge collapsed due to the weight of all of the locks and on its chain link fence. And you can Google that and you can see what it looked like. It's amazing how many locks are on this thing. In total, when they pulled that section back out of the river, minus the keys that are down there somewhere, it weighed 45 tons. So you can imagine the bridges were not designed, especially a bridge this age, was not designed to hold metal locks in droves and droves and droves of them. So if you're going to do this, I highly encourage you to consider that part of it first, and maybe not. There's other ways to show your love for your special person. So, but I thought it was interesting because it's a superstition, which we covered superstition many episodes ago. So, okay, let's go a couple slides up. So, that's Harpers Ferry. It's an interesting place. It's got a lot of cool features about it. It's a totally accessible town. One more slide. And there's lots to do for everybody. Whether you like to see historical stuff, you like to be outdoors, you just want to hang out and not do anything, it's great for that, certainly. So, sure. Sorry, I see stuff before y'all do, and that made me laugh. Thanks, Bert. I'm gonna go with don't do that. Again, with you are too. So, unless she's willing, it's a different story.
We won't go there.
We won't. You should not go there, guys. I'm sorry. I apologize. So, in conclusion to all of this, Harpers Ferry has such a long history and has been such a key location that I find it hard to believe there's not something here that's paranormal or haunted. Aside from John Brown's bloody raid and the losses while it was changing hands during the Civil War, and the tales otherwise of all the people and the stuff, there are numerous reports of people being lost to both rivers during high flood times or just during activities out in the water. There are people who have lost in the woods, literally, and never come back. There is wildlife here, so obviously they tell you to go with caution. And there were those who simply died in a place they loved over the last 290 years. So I have been to Harpers Ferry many times, and I can understand why somebody would want to stay, because I do.
Yep.
So, oh boy. Thanks, Heather. Always keep a spare pocket in your sock. Okay, that's a pro tip. So, Ted, I've threw a lot of stuff at you, a lot of stuff in these last 40-some minutes. So, what do you think?
I mean, again, it's one of these historic old towns. It's been there since forever, and there's just got to be stuff there. I mean, not having experienced any of it, I can't say one way or the other, but I would think that yes, there's definitely something there. Between first of all, you've got the energy of the river, and so, the rivers. You've got the history. You've got the raid, the Civil War going on all around it. There's so many things there. So yeah, I would think yes, there it has to have something, and I'm glad that it has become a national park, so it is preserved.
It is exactly that.
Yep. I think Todd has a plan here.
Speaking of road trips, here we are. Yeah, this is a great loop, actually.
So, Not that fast if you do it on a bicycle, though.
No, this is definitely a drive timeline.
So, but yeah, that would be a great road trip.
Absolutely.
So,
And that what's interesting is, the proximity from Harpers Ferry to Washington. The canal obviously is not a straight line. It follows the river, but the access way. There's so many ways to do this. One of my favorite things when you're driving in, you're coming in. I think it's Highway 50. You're coming down a pass toward the river, and then you pop out, and you're on a bridge, of course, going over the Potomac. Then the city, the town, I keep calling it city, the town is just over to the right, and you see it almost immediately. And then you lose it again, because then you dip into Virginia for a while, and you kind of come around. And in this image, up in the very top corner, or top center of the picture, there's a line across the river. That's the bridge you come into West Virginia on. And then your access, there's lots of direction on how to get to the battlefield sites and so forth in the town itself. It's just such an odd and interesting, like, even just to get there, it kind of feels like it pops up on you out of almost nowhere.
So I'm wondering if I haven't driven through it on the way to, like, or at least very near to it on the way to, like, West Virginia's penitentiary or St. Albans.
No, different direction. Unfortunately, fortunate or unfortunate, either way, they're both angles are south. You would have come through West Virginia over toward Winchester, closer that way, or in that general direction.
Virginia, there's just so many of these
old to the west, going down like 83.
Okay. There's so many of these old, beautiful towns that are sitting along the rivers that I know. It just.
Sure.
I have to make a trip. So
the difference here is opportunity. You talk about Pittsburgh as a commercial hub that it became. There's two rivers there. They conflude. The confluence of those two rivers come together, and it created opportunity. And the Ohio is such a big thing. Heading all the way down to the Mississippi. Towns like Cincinnati popped up and others along the way. Harpers Ferry, just either by intention or just from some missing connection, just never got that far. But it certainly could be one of those hubs. And it was at a time, when there was manufacturing here. And like anything else here, even here where we're at, in South Central Pennsylvania, the town of Columbia, which is in my hometown, at one point was a thriving industrial town. There was all kinds of facilities making all kinds of stuff right along the river. There was a full canal running down to the Chesapeake, taking goods and services away and bringing resources back in to make more stuff. And as things changed, and the canal went away and the rail line came in, that should have changed things, and it did. And the ability to make things cheaper, bigger facilities elsewhere changed things. So I'm assuming that's part of what happened at Harpers Ferry. And there's some intentionality about keeping it be a small town as well. There's a lot of pride in that there.
Right.
And you're not going to have a lot of traffic. In fact, you're not going to have much traffic at all. You're going to see people walking everywhere, so it's kind of got that neat small town feel still. It doesn't have a main street, so there's not that commercial hub kind of thing going on. Everything's very small local business driven stuff. There's bed and breakfasts. There are restaurants, but you're not going to find a Starbucks or McDonald's anywhere nearby. In fact, you almost have to go to Charlestown. I know because I have gone to Charlestown to try to find fast food, which is like 20 minutes away. We're going back into Maryland on the other line. So, it is intentional. It's cute that way, and it's quaint, and it's calming, and it makes it a great place to visit and stay because you're not overwhelmed by all the other stimulants that we have everywhere else we go.
Right.
That to me is the best part of it. It really is.
Cool.
And I miss the Hilltop House because the best fried chicken is there.
So,
all right. Well, that's what I have, sir. Thank you. Thanks for indulging me on this one.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've wanted to go before, but now it's like I really want to go. So, and you hit on the ghost tour. I think they're definitely not paranormal investigations, but I think they're really interesting to see and do. I've done the one in Williamsburg a couple different times, and it's always interesting to do them with different tour guides because I know in Williamsburg they have a book a reference book, and they have to learn the stories out of the reference book, but the storytellers tell them differently, and they go to different houses on different nights.
Yep.
So it makes it interesting. You get so much personality out of it.
Absolutely. And that's exactly it. It's an every night of the week kind of gig. So it's not the same person nobody works, all those days straight. Well, some people could, I guess. It's only a couple hours, but so you will have different guides, for different days of the week. And it's I don't know what the cost is, but it's very affordable. It's very low cost.
And I know
donation kind of thing. I forget, but it's just, it is that character driven, because people as character, people have character before they are characters. And that we've seen that even at the brewery. We've had times when they do their ghost tour, which is different than our paranormal investigating, of course, but they've overlapped us at times. Or Sam Allen, the owner, has decided that someone needs a tour because they're asking, and he'll do a personal tour for them. And each of the persons, and they're all actors, because they participate in the dinner theater. They're staff, so they're well versed, and it kind of takes it to be each one of them tells a story. Although they're telling generally the same things, they're all going to tell them in their own flair and personality. And it's really kind of fun, because I've had a chance to hear a lot of it through the last several years of being there.
Right. Well, even when we do the investigations and we give the history on each little room, you do it differently than I do than Dave does.
Sure.
And
you guys do it much better than I do. Absolutely.
David does it much better than any of us. So.
Well, he is a long pole in the tent. So I hope he's still with us. I'm never going to let that go. Heather just brought up a good point. The lack of traffic and the lack of the other stuff really does help with that atmosphere, and that's the word I was looking for. It has an atmosphere of its own.
Exactly.
People come and go. The train comes on a regular schedule. People use that train station as a landing point to go to Washington and wherever else, to Pittsburgh. It's that line that runs between the two. So the commuter line is there, and that parking lot's always full. So don't get me wrong, there is traffic coming and going to some degree, but it's not heavy traffic. It's not like there's no red lights in this whole place. There's like 2 stop signs maybe. So it is just that, it's just back in the day.
Wow.
Really cool atmosphere.
So you can go spend an afternoon there one weekend.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, the Stonehouse has a fantastic patio deck, a porch overlooking, and there's a room above that level as well that has its own private balcony. And just sitting there and watching people go by down below is really kind of fun too. It's so calming.
But people watching is always fun.
But it is. It is. You're right. Absolutely right. And especially people who are looking for parking spaces.
So.
All right. Yes, agreed. Thanks, Todd. I appreciate that. It's not on your list. It should be at some point. I recommend it. You don't know me, obviously, but my tastes are. But I think I can say this safely. I think everybody will find something to do there, or not to do, which is the best part. Bring a book.
Cool. So.
It's a pastime. It really is. That's true. That's a very good point, Heather. Very good point.
Yeah. So
you make your own, if not.
So, all right. Well, Jamie, again, thank you. I think I appreciated this one. I learned a lot, but I feel like I have a lot more to learn and experience there. So,
okay. Well, if we get a chance, we'll get down there and figure it out too. We'll see. Okay.
Yep. So. Should we move on?
We shall.
All right.
Oh my, we have stuff coming up.
We do. We've a week or two. So
yeah, this seems so far apart. Like we've been a month apart. Now, obviously, last month we were 2 and 1 in the same month, but this one is more like 5 weeks instead of 4. I think because of the way it landed first and the 29th, it's just that extra week in there. It just feels like it's taking a while to get there. And I'm not trying to rush time. We got enough stuff to do in between, but I'm looking forward to getting back.
Yep. Yeah. Because the team is a family, and I miss being together all the time. So
I agree. I do agree with that.
Anyway. So the 29th, like Jamie said, we have 17 tickets left. Then the 13th, the 10th, 13th of July, 10th of August, and the 7th of September. We are still waiting for Boobies to get the other ones posted. Really looking forward to some things that are coming up and want to talk about, but don't want to talk about them until they're for sale. So
yeah, we got to make them be officially official.
Yep. So there's that. Then coming up on the shows, I expanded this one. So here's a funny story.
Thank you.
Jamie had put the Hotel Hershey on the list, and things got shipped.
I don't remember this at all. I think you're making that up.
No, because I definitely didn't. I would have never known to put it on the list. So it showed up on the It showed up on the list.
It made the list, right?
It made the list, and I said, "Hey, Jamie, are you doing the Hotel Hershey?" He goes, "No, that's your week." And I'm like, I'm like, okay, I'll run with it. So digging into it a little bit, there is a little bit of stuff at the Hotel Hershey, but I'm going to expand it and talk about Hershey in general, because there's some other places that have things going on. There's the theater, the park, things like that.
Sure.
But as a little bit of a teaser, Jamie, do you know how the Hotel Hershey is tied to World War II and prisoners of war?
Is it because it's the Swedish? Damn it! I can't say it again. Swedish place on earth.
No. So I will dig into that next week. But there is a tie between Hotel Hershey. Okay. Yep, I'm serious. Seriously, there's a tie between Hotel Hershey, prisoners of war and World War II. So, and our out of town guy knows it. So,
okay.
So very cool.
Hold that tie. Just hold it for a while.
Yep. Okay. And now I got to get the facts straight, because Todd knows it already. Then we've got La Siwanaba coming up, Eastern State Penitentiary. I talked to Alex today. He and I maybe do a road trip on this coming Friday down to Eastern State. Ooh. Just so I can get some pictures.
Okay.
You know, we can't investigate.
Yes.
But we can go
investigate.
Tour. Right. So we'll take the camera and see what we can come up with if we can both get the day off work. Then after that, we're going to take a break for a week. And then on the 16th, the Haldeman Mansion with Jerry and Missy.
Yep.
Then Brown Mountain Lights. So, yeah, you can do a tour. You just can't investigate when you're on the tour. No K2s, no EVP recorders.
You just call it EVP recorder.
I did it for you, Jamie. I did it for you.
It's not for me. That's all Andrew. Okay. Quick story that we have a team member who I think intentionally called it an EVP recorder instead of a digital voice recorder. And of course, we never let that go. So yeah, it's one of those things. Like, come on, man, you know better. Andrew, love you, buddy.
So anyway, got some good stuff coming up. We have some things in the works that we're thinking about. We're looking into. So,
yeah, good point.
Yeah, they can't take my phone from me.
Right. Just record the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. So,
you should get yourself a selfie stick. There's probably one over there somewhere, right?
Probably.
There's one here somewhere. I know that.
So, I don't know. They charge extra if you take a tripod into the penitentiary. Did you know that? They charge you an equipment fee. You can take your camera, but to take a tripod or anything like that, it's an extra fee. So,
okay.
Which actually I appreciate, because there's been times at Longwood Gardens where I've gone and I hate when people are like set up on a tripod blocking a path.
Yeah, I can see it. It's more of an inconvenience fee is what you do to others. Okay. It's all right.
So
as well. All right. You guys take care. Thanks so much for coming. We'll see you next time.
So anyway, here's where you can find us on socials right now. Maybe there's gonna be some other places at some point soon. We'll see.
Hopefully. We have some plans. Some plans we'll have to work out first, but more to come. I think we'll be able to talk more about that when we get back from our break. For the Haldeman Mansion episode. I think we can show us some good news then, or other news. It's good for us. It's good for everybody.
So
okay.
So yeah, again, Jamie, thank you for filling us all in on Harpers Ferry and giving us the background and the history. Thanks to all our guests who are watching with us live, and all the guests who watch us later down the road, because we've been looking at the numbers, and we appreciate all those people who jump on afterwards and want to hear the information we have to share. So thank you very much. So
keep this in mind, for those later. We do see any comments you would make. So if you have questions about the episode or thoughts about what we're talking about or any insights to share with us, feel free to drop it in, because we will catch it. And that expands this conversation just even more so. Or things you don't like. Don't do that. But and also we always ask, if there's any of you guys want to hear an episode on something of interest to you in your area, your region, something about, that's near and dear to you. Feel free to share that with us too. We're always willing to go a little further. We have a list of stuff, but the things we're want to talk about can get bumped certainly very easily. So we're always happy to bring it into the discussion and do an episode on it.
Yeah, Jamie will assign it to me. Don't worry. So
don't worry. It's going to be just like the Hotel Hershey. I'm just going to.
So, all right. Well, on that note,
we have a guest.
We have a guest popping in.
Hey, there's him.
We haven't seen Emmy for a little while.
A part-time contributor from the Superstition episode and others. So.
Yep, Commonweal. Hey, Emmy, Commonweal opened today. Oh, that's the other thing we can say. The Commonweal in Columbia is officially open. So we alluded to it, but it is open. So
stop by 127 Locust Street. Great folks, great bikes, great stuff, and maybe you'll meet Charlie while you're there.
I would say hi to him. So
I would definitely say hi. Yep.
So on that note, Jamie, let's say good night and sign off, and we'll see everybody next week.
I have one more thing.
One more thing.
Since we're in West Virginia.
All right.
Roll the credits. We're out of here.
All right.
Good night, everybody.